What's up everyone, Emil here to get you up to date on all things DoubleDM. It's a beautiful Sunday morning here and it's election day in Germany. I just cast my vote and had breakfast, so yeah, wish my country luck or something. First up, Why Your World Matters 2 is now finished. I will try to get the podcast version up ASAP. It was a great discussion by our panelists about inspiration and building, how they learn new stuff, and so much more. Some of you also might remember Eli from Mayday Roleplay from episode 9 of the show. Mayday Roleplay has a new Orpheus stream campaign that also started yesterday on the 25th. And you should definitely check out the VOD. Like, if you know me at all, you know how much I adore Mayday Roleplay. Okay. In this episode, Sam and Phil join us to talk about the charity event Everyone Games and general accessibility in gaming. I want to thank both of them for being with us and sharing their knowledge, insight, and stories. With that, there's only one thing left for me to do, and is ask you guys to give us a nice review and follow on the social media platforms. With that, enjoy episode 33 about the Everyone Games charity event. All of the links Phil and Sam provide will be found in the description of this podcast episode. Please check there if you're interested in either donating, checking out the event, or any other of the resources that they've provided. What's up, everyone? Welcome to DoubleDM episode 34. That's a 3, that's a 4, that's a 7 edition. Niels, how are you doing?
Confused, but good.
that is my brand.
Nice. So we're just right on as we usually are.
Yes.
Confused, but yeah, confused mainly.
Okay. Niels, how was your week?
I can't really complain. There wasn't really a lot going on, but we had a one-shot together where we're both players, which I sadly missed the ending because I had to go to work, but...
Fucking capitalism.
Yeah, sorry, I want to eat something and I want to live somewhere, stuff like that.
Understandable.
But how was this one-shot for you?
Okay, for me especially, I think it was very fun because we played a well mesh of characters, I believe, for having fun, because we've, like, in the one shot episode, that in the bonus episode with Matt, we talked about that characters need to be simple but interesting, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we did, I think, because you can make a very elaborate character for your one shot and play that, and then maybe take the character elsewhere and play it again. But the thing is, a very elaborate characters can't be played out in a one shot. You can't get to the bottom of it. So we went into this. We've had an elven druid who was socially awkward. We've had a fighter who's
really good/bad at making plans, or at least he made a lot of plans.
He made plans.
Yeah.
And then we also had you.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about your character anymore. You're a sorcerer, I believe.
Yeah, some weird kind of sorcerer.
Okay.
Crap, you know? Just sorcery points using sorcery points as you do as a sorcerer, you know?
Yeah, understandable. I played shy and unconfident artificer. That was fun.
Yeah, the interactions as a whole in the group were a lot of weird but fun moments, I think.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think, however, that, yeah, the thing about the one-shot was it wasn't really that much to talk about, right? It was do this, we went there, we went somewhere else, we got attacked, we went somewhere else, we attacked, we went somewhere else, we attacked, we got beaten up, and then we said, wait, we can strike a deal with the vampire lady that we were supposed to assassinate, but did not assassinate. It was fun, though. It was very fun what we did, but it felt a little surface level, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it was pretty simple and plain, if you want to call it that, one shot, but it worked. It was nothing game-changing, but a fun little intermission, you could say.
Yeah. It was a fun round. I mean, we got to play, so I have no problem with that.
That's always fun.
I have another story. I've had my GPU break down on Monday? One of those 2 days.
That's rough.
It broke down, and in the current market for GPUs, if you don't know, because some of you might not know, it's impossible to get a GPU. It's just simply impossible. You will have to enter a waiting queue for like 2 days and then have luck to get one. And
yeah, it's a nightmare at the moment.
It's a fucking nightmare. And yeah, I'm so glad that I'm an idiot when it comes to selling my computer parts, because I always think they will have another use, which this GPU, the old one I have, did. However, it's completely affecting my life on the computer, because my computer completely runs differently now. I can't play video games. It's a nightmare. But I think there's a light on the horizon, as well, if some people think that my GPU is getting fixed in like a week. Thank you. No. But I might get a replacement in 2 weeks, a borrowed one.
Okay.
Because my old one is getting checked, and might take 8 weeks to check, because it's entering a waiting queue again. This is such a shitty situation right now for graphics cards, and nobody knows how to fix it.
Yeah, it's just this situation with graphic cards has been going on a pretty long time, actually.
Yeah.
Since the release of the 3080 and 3090 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And with all these lockdowns and stuff going on, it just exploded, the demand for graphic cards and all that. It's a weird time. Yeah.
You had a session you have a session coming up, right?
Exactly. Right when on the day this episode releases, I will have a session where I am a player as well. We talked about this with Matt, actually, the one-shot where I play the Paladin, or the game which was supposed to be a one-shot and is now in its third or fourth installment already. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I've just seen, when I walked to the arena in the beach resort where we are in right now, I just saw the weapon that killed me the day before.
Woo!
So yeah, I'm terrified, and my character is as well. So yeah, let's see how this turns out. But I will keep you informed about that. Do you have any sessions coming up? Anything big or...
Well, for sessions coming up, the next session I have DMing is on the 4th of October. So talking about that will maybe make my players will maybe listen to this already, so I can't. I have a session coming up on Tuesday where I'm a player, at least I hope so. We are basically in the final stretches of the campaign. We are now in a desert, in a big canyon, and below in that canyon is a jungle, and we are in that jungle, and we were like, okay, we are in this jungle. Our big boss enemies are through that gate. We need to get through that gate, but first we need to do some stuff here, and we did some stuff there. We went scouting and stuff, and one of us got caught by some kind of lizard folk. Then they parted ways. So now we know the lizard folk are here. The lizard folk know that we are here, and both know that the others know.
Yeah.
Fun.
This can be quite interesting.
Yeah, we still have to deal with the fallout, because we had the element of surprise. We kind of knew that lizard folk are here, so we actually didn't gain anything from this encounter. But yeah, now we have confirmation.
All right. Yeah, and I mean, expecting something to be there and then it actually being there are still two different, whole different things.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, the reason why we are there is the lizard folk and their evil overlords and stuff.
Yeah, okay, I see. Should we go on to the episode, or do you have anything else?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so see you in a bit. Welcome back, and now we are with our two guests, Sam and Phil. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Who are you? Where do you come from? How do you got into TTRPGs? All that stuff.
Phil, you go first.
Well, if you insist. So, hi everybody. I'm mostly blind gamer on various places on the internet, and you can also call me Phil, and I will also answer to things like, hey you, it's to the left, regardless if I actually want to go to the left. I'm a visually impaired TTRPG player. I tell computers to spit fire for a living, which is very cool, and affords me the opportunity to do a lot of things online, including playing awesome games with people. I got into TTRPGs pretty recently, really. I started getting into the hype around when Stranger Things came out. I don't know if you guys watched the show, but the first scene is sort of reminiscent of E.T. They're all playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing. Oh, I actually have a friend who plays that, I think. Let me call him up. Hey, you play Dungeons and Dragons, right? Yeah. I got a group from work. Oh, okay. So I probably can't play with you guys, can I? So I ended up over at the Knights of the Braille Discord server, which is a project that's been going on for a number of years, bringing blind and visually impaired tabletop players together and creating accessible resources, collecting accessible resources, and everybody just having a good time playing tabletop RPGs. Yeah, I guess that's who I am in this context, at least.
Nice. Sam?
Hi. Yeah, so Sam, or Bifford, as I'm known pretty much everywhere, or Bifford Youngest to give the sort of the original moniker. Quite late to RPGs, really. I started in about 2000 when I hit up with a LARP group in the UK, which also did roleplay games on the side. Kind of found my feet and hit the road running with that. Loved it ever since. I'm much more of a freeform and not the D&D style games where it's all scenario based and it's all pre-written. I like to make stuff up as I go or make things up out of my mind. So I'm much more of an improv person. I've done proofreading and editing for absolutely ages. So I fell into bed with Ariane Games and started helping him with a load of his books and other game lines that he does. And since sort of finding that little niche, I've expanded that into White Hair Games and started the Warlock Returns magazine, which is a fighting fantasy and advanced fighting fantasy zine, just working on issue 5 now. So, but also put myself out there for hire where need be. So I've worked alongside Todd Crapper and Accessible Gaming Quarterly with Jacob Woods. And that's a fantastic magazine, which I'm sure we'll touch on during the podcast, because that's something I would recommend everyone who's interested in making their games accessible and how to help other people to play alongside them when they might not have all of the visual faculties or auditorial faculties that other people have to really help them game with us. And that magazine can help you with that a lot. So yeah, one of the projects that I've jumped in bed with. And I've been helping with some of the graphics on Everyone games as well.
Okay, so you both been so generous to come onto our show to talk about the charity event Everyone Games. And if I'm looking at the website correctly, it's October 1st and 2nd from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so walk me a bit through the event itself. What's gonna happen? What shows, what panels, and what people will be there?
So maybe let's get your listeners started with the very interesting names. I think a lot of people in the TTRPG community are gonna know of Satine Phoenix, who's a fantastic DM. She'll be running a game of Dungeons and Dragons at the event. It's gonna be on Friday, and it's absolutely very exciting. People turning up to that: Brian Posehn, whom you might know from The Big Bang Theory, and also his own stand-up. Jennifer Kretschner, who is a fantastic, she's a fantastic advocate in disability, but she's also a great creative person in the TTRPG community as well. Also, Blind Temple. I don't know how famous is Blind Temple. Not enough. If you're on Twitter, go find him. He is most likely the nicest person on the whole platform. And every month he runs Ask a Blind Guy on Twitter. So, if you ever have a question that you think needs answering, he's definitely your man. Yeah, so that's going to be a really important part of this, getting people excited about this. and showing up for that. As far as panels, we got a lot of stuff, focused on the accessibility part. The thing is, the name of the event is really important to us because it's not, come watch these blind and visually impaired people play games. Oh no, the games aren't all working for us. Whatever shall we do? Please come help us. It's it's an entirely different perspective from that. It's TTRPGs have all it takes to work for basically everyone. A broad range of people is into them and wants to play them and enjoy them together. They have community aspects that I think are absolutely fantastic. And we're trying to bring that to everybody. It's an event for everyone. Along the way, while you're watching the games on stream, while you're watching the panels, spare a thought for what can we do to make things, even better as far as reaching more people and getting more people into this awesome community, with really as much comfort as one can ask for, right? We all have different challenges that we face, but things can always be made better, and we can be a really strong community working with each other and promoting this kind of access and inclusion. So for some of the earlier games that I assume your audience might be interested in, given the time zones, I'll be running a game of Cat, which is a Pool of D6 RPG at 7 a.m. Eastern on Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. On the 2nd of October, there's going to be a really fun D&D game around historical figures. That's D&D Epic History. Really good stuff, I imagine. And I would also like to highlight real quick Survival of the Able. That's later in the day on Saturday. That's 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern. Is a game designed by Jacob Wood. It's really something else. It's so the characters are all disabled and they're trying to survive a zombie plague.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm sure that's going to be a lot of fun. It's about to come out. It's on Kickstarter, or it's going to be on Kickstarter soon. So check that out and look for it at the event.
Okay, nice. I definitely want to circle back to the celebrity game, because there's one person on there who has also been on this show, so listeners of the show might know Maka the DM from Check These Out, who's also part of that, when I'm seeing that correctly on
absolutely website. That is correct.
Yeah, Maka's a friend of ours, and people might know, especially our audience might know him as well, so
totally, absolutely. I mean, listen, there's so many cool things going on, so many cool people involved. I get a little lost myself.
Like scrolling through the website, I can like you said, Blind Temple is one of the nicest people I've ever met on Twitter. I've interacted with on my personal, and generally, looking at this list of people, all of them look nice. You can see all of these people are people that I've at least heard of, that for being advocates for just making games accessible, helping people, lifting the community up, and generally just being nice to each other. And it brings it back to the message that the charity event is supposed to present, right? Everyone games. We are all friends. We are all nice to each other. We are all playing together. We are a community. We hold together, and just celebrating that we play together.
There's also going to be some video games going on. So it's the flip side of the TTRPG is the video RPGs. You've got Danny Marie and Brandon Cole, Marcella, Liam Irvin, and Sightless Combat all running games. So for those that are more inclined towards the video games, which are still RPGs, they're just action on a TV. They'll be running as well.
Yeah, we can get into the definitions there, absolutely. So, I mean, I assume these names might not stand out too much to people in the TTRPG community, but these are some awesome streamers who are out there pretty much every day proving that if you're visually impaired or if you're totally blind, you can still be a gamer. I mean, personally, I have experience with playing video games as a visually impaired person and getting to a point where I felt like I couldn't game anymore, and the fact that there's people who keep doing doing it and keep showing the games that do work and how well they do or do not work, highlighting cool innovations and even working with the developers to make games accessible is absolutely fantastic. Now, I mean, for instance, Liam Irvin, I would say, is a pioneer in the audio game world because, with positional audio, there's so much you can do, and that's even a component of, any regular big enough video game nowadays. And there's games out there that are entirely audio based, and it's not always a weird niche thing. The Veil is out on PC and Xbox, and that's an audio game that sounds to be really fun and engaging. Yeah, Sightless Combat is going to be on stream playing The Last of Us Part 2 on the hardest difficulty, and as the name would suggest, he's a gamer without sight. Yeah, you can do it. There's games out there. There's not a lot of them. We want them, we want there to be more, and that's why we're doing this, to highlight the good things and show that, when good things come out, we're here for them and we want more, right?
Definitely. Even as a person that has no, that isn't visually impaired in any way, I might not be able to or appreciate the games the way that other people do that are visually impaired, but I still think that it's a good thing to have, right? Again, Everyone games, right?
Absolutely.
Why would we block the gates for these people? All of them are nice people. We want them in the community after all. They are nice. I want to talk to them. I want to play with them. I want to get to know them.
Yeah, and when you think about it, things that are necessary for the day-to-day of somebody who has a disability are sometimes very useful for anybody else who doesn't have that disability in certain circumstances, right? So if, you just, for instance, have your phone, far away from you while you're, doing some mechanical thing under your car or whatever, wouldn't it be handy to interact with it through voice, right? For some people with motor disabilities, that might be a day-to-day way that they use a device like that. But, once in a while, it might be helpful for anybody else. I mean, The Last of Us Part 2 has a feature that reduces the dynamic range in the audio. Right? So there's a smaller gap between very loud and very quiet. That's fantastic if you're hard of hearing, right? Because you can adjust the volume to where the mid-level is good for you, and there won't be anything that's super quiet, and there also won't be anything that's phenomenally loud. Now, one of the parts of the game where the settings where you can find that is the night mode. If you're playing in the living room at night and you want to turn the volume down, and you don't want the explosions to wake everybody up, and you still want to hear the quiet dialogue, right? So that's what we want. People want options that might be necessary sometimes, but might be just super useful some other time.
All right, and all this event we talked about, is one reason for it is to raise money for charity. And could you guys elaborate on where the money will go?
So one of the charities that I've kind of gotten into is Special Effect. They're primarily aimed towards people that want to help less able people do video games. However, they can also then just open up technology to anyone. So basically what Special Effect do is they go into people's houses and they will profile someone that maybe has cerebral palsy or isn't able to see, and they will adapt the technology so that they can play games. So for example, they might set up massive great big footpad buttons that take the place of the keyboard or the mouse and allow them to play games like Elite Dangerous or Call of Duty and such games like that they can actually play those games. However, from looking at their video VTs that they've got on the website and other things they've done, that doesn't just affect people that play games, it can affect people in their everyday life. They've got one video of a guy that was able to finish his master's degree after he had a car crash and wasn't able to use the majority of his limbs. So he was able to just use the computer again and finish his degree. And, he's still as smart as a person can be, but just his body wasn't doing what it was designed to do. So Special Effect, for me, really important charity because it just opens up a world for people. It can let kids express to their family that they love them when they can't talk and can't move, and just opens the world up to them.
I always have to say that when I watch those type of videos, you can find a lot of those type of videos of miracle stories of disabled people being able to express their feelings to their family, right? For the first time. They obviously tear me up every time, right? They are such heartfelt stories because it's a heartfelt moment. Because I, again, speaking from a person that has no disability, I can't imagine how it would feel to have a disability like that. I can't, and I respect the people that do, because I don't know how I would handle it. And seeing people that work through their disability, work with it, and however go through life and still are able to be the person they want to be, and that is always inspiring to me.
Well, I mean, as a disabled person, personally, I would very much like to not inspire anybody, because at the end of the day, we all just gotta wake up in the morning and, have breakfast, and, most people want to go to work. Some people don't want to go to work, and that's just fine too. We want to be with our families. We want to, have our lives, and we want to. Okay, so ultimately, the worst case scenario for a kind of conversation like that is having to explain to somebody that, okay, thanks. I'm also very proud of you for getting up in the morning and having breakfast, right? That could almost be taken as an insult by somebody, because you expect to be able to do that, right? You expect that you're going to wake up and you're going to, get out of bed and brush your teeth, have breakfast, whatever. And people with disabilities don't want brushing their teeth to be a fantastic, awe-inspiring achievement. They want it to be just as normal as anybody else, right?
Yeah.
That is sometimes an initially or continuously an insurmountable task, right? Things like that can be an insurmountable task. And well, how impressive is it, for somebody who's blind to read a novel, right? Is that something that's impressive? You could argue for it being impressive. I would very much prefer that you didn't. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, totally.
Right. What's ideal for everybody is for a normal thing to be normal. Right. That's really the message in building awareness for and fighting for accessibility, is that you can look at disability in two different ways. You can look at a disability as something that's wrong with you, and because of that, you don't fit in with the rest of the world. But on the other hand, you can look at it as the world having a problem because it doesn't fit in with you, who are a human being. It's a different way of thinking about things. And if you think of it the first way, you might be impressed and astonished. If you think of it the other way, well, you're astonished that something that is sometimes so easy to solve with some kind of assistive technology, some kind of accommodation, or just an adjustment to how things are done, can be so incredible. I mean, for instance, the thought that someone entering a building with lots of steps, if they have a motor disability, can be extraordinary, or it can be extraordinary that a building that's open to the public has a barrier to a portion of the public, right? So there's those two ways of looking at the issue.
Definitely want to say one thing. I obviously didn't want to be ableist to anyone. Again, for the people listening, I have not met many people that are disabled in my life, and might therefore be not as well taught as I should be.
Oh yeah, I get you. I'm riffing on where you started, right?
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure that that's on the record, more or less. Okay, so I would love to move on.
We'll all sign a document saying
okay, I want to move on to how do, for example, we as the DoubleDM podcast, how can we help people in any way? What's the best thing we can do?
When it comes to making your games accessible to people, inviting people in that you may not normally invite in. So let's say you're at a convention, try and have space around your table so that people that have the motor skills issues can get there. There's space between the tables and there's room for a wheelchair to come in. Have a room that maybe isn't as crowded as it normally would be at conventions, because you don't want too much sound, because that makes it really hard to hear and be heard. Good lighting, I think, is actually something that's paramount. I've been a photographer for 15 years before my current job, and when I go around to my friends for games night, I get the table moved underneath the lights, because it's a low light situation. She's got lower light bulbs in that aren't as bright as I would have at home. So I need the table where, and I've got vision. I can see perfectly, but I still get affected by a lack of light, so that I can't read my own writing. And that applies to everyone, especially people with vision issues. They need brightness, they need big text. So you can do big maps. You can make sure that you're not writing in tiny little writing. Do everything big and bold. Use the paper to its fullest degree, and make it as easy to read as possible, and keep the fonts simple.
Mm-hmm. So, Sam, you also said that you are a small-time publisher, right?
Yeah, correct. I've got a couple of PDFs out, but mainly I do the Warlock Returns, which is a fighting fantasy and advanced fighting fantasy magazine.
Mm-hmm.
We've done 4 issues so far. I'm working on the 5th. And one thing I try to do is build in to that accessibility. I do layers on everything so that you can turn the pictures off, you can turn the background layer off, you can have just the text, and hopefully it makes it accessible for everyone. I don't block printing on the PDFs, so because there are publishers out there that block printing because they think it's going to stop people from stealing your work. I don't care. If people want to share my work, then it will spread it around to other people, and they then might go out and buy it themselves. But I like to make it as accessible as possible to everyone, and that includes things like bookmarks. Bookmarks and heading are so important to everyone, because it allows screen readers to read what people need them to read at any particular time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sometimes you get a PDF, it looks fantastic, and the text is all selectable. So you would assume that a computer can read that perfectly out loud to the user with a screen reader. And maybe even if your PDF reader's read aloud feature, it sounds pretty good. But the thing is, if you read a document visually, you kind of forget how much information you get at a glance. Right, you can tell by looking at the table of contents at a glance how many pages there are in the document. Probably, right? Even if you completely blurred all the actual text, just Sam, I'm sure there's a great word for this, like the shape of all of the text. Yeah, but just the general outline of it will tell you a lot of things that you wouldn't know if you couldn't see it all. And having a proper table of contents, that's, you click the little table of contents icon and that pops out. That's what the screen reader is reading. If that's not there, then someone who's blind has no idea what's going on in the document before they start reading it, from start to finish. Finding the heading you want. When you're reading a document, sometimes you'll read the whole thing, but if it's a reference, right, if you're reading a monster manual, right, and you're looking for a specific monster, you could Control or Command F to the name of the monster, but if you want to go through the list, you probably want to go heading by heading, and when you find the one you're looking for, then you read after that, right? It's a bit of a different way of using a document, and it relies on the PDF being properly prepared, properly constructed. A lot of this is pretty automatic. Some things take some actual work after the fact, and adding tags and something like Adobe. Also having alternative text for your pictures. If you have just a decorative picture, you can mark that as such. You can hide it from the screen reader. People hand me PDFs to review sometimes, and I get title of it and then image. And I can look at it, but if I couldn't, I would have no idea if they were important images where I'm missing information, or if they were just, pretty squiggly lines decorating the edges of the page, for instance. And if they are important image, I want to have some kind of an explanation for what's going on there, right? So, you might have a figure that's a paladin fighting an orc, right? I don't know. If a sighted reader is supposed to enjoy that, then why isn't a blind reader supposed to enjoy it, right? Or maybe you have something much more functional, and people can be missing out on that. Also, tables are terrible.
I've not got the hang of tables yet.
Right?
I have honestly no idea, so could you please elaborate on that, because that sounds interesting to me now.
So actually, I don't actually make tables in documents that I want to be accessible at all on the internet. For web stuff, you can make them decently accessible, but you can make them accessible, but they're a little more tiring to read than for a sighted person. Now, tables and PDFs, you can set your headers so that your column names are repeated for each cell. Ideally, if you have a table in document, when you go over it with a screen reader, you should be able to navigate from cell to cell freely, right? Because you might want to scan column from top to bottom, and you might want to scan a row from left to right. So you shouldn't just have to, it shouldn't just be text with no semantic information to it, that you would just have to go right. Okay, sounds like I might be at the next row, maybe, hopefully, right? Let's go ahead and count the columns. Ideally, you'll be able to know what cell you're on, get the header repeated so you know what that column is all about. I will, I don't have that at hand right now. I will try and get you some resources on accessible docs. I do believe resources that Jennifer Kretschmer prepared will include something like that for anybody who wants to really get into it. On the web, it's actually generally really easy to make an accessible table. You just have to call it a table.
That's reasonably simple.
HTML is very accessible as a
Right.
whole. It's designed in such a way that the screen readers have no problems with it whatsoever, as long as you know how to code properly.
Yeah, if you write basic standard HTML, if you have a table, if that table has a header, the header has the header elements, then you have rows with the cells. That's gonna work just fine, right? Now, if you are a fancy pants new age developer using all sorts of crazy hip new frameworks that just have thousands upon thousands of meaningless divs everywhere, please don't. Please use proper semantics. At least use ARIA. But a table's a table, and they've been around for a long time. A link, is a link. It's an anchor. Just A. How hard is that? It's quicker to type A for a link than to type div and then add some crazy class to that, right? One of these days there was a situation, there was this contest on Twitter, and the website was, frankly, it wasn't even that complicated or visually interesting to some crazy degree, but the link to the rules was a div that responded to a click, but it was not tab focusable. So when you get to a website and you start hitting the tab key, it, generally speaking, will go from one element to another of the website. That one was not tab focusable, and a screen reader didn't know it was not part of the text. So there was literally no way for someone who can't use a mouse or a touchscreen, or for someone who is blind, to open the link to the rules, which just blows my mind, because instead of a fancy div, you could just type the letter A there. Now, to be fair, this was called out, and after a while, their developers went in there and they used the web accessibility tools that are out there to make that div actually work, right? It's possible to do that. It just took 2 extra steps to make it, first, tab focusable, and second, respond to the keyboard as well as a click. So if you start with the basics right, you can make them pretty. We can have our cake and eat it too. People can make an accessible website, people can make accessible documents, and still have them be very pretty and fancy to a degree. Things like parallax are, when you get to a web page and part of the text starts scrolling up really quick and another part's really slow. That's annoying, hard to read, and it's also very bad for people with vestibular disorders. It is possible to make a website that is so bad that people will literally pass out when they get to them. But it's hard. you have to do many things very wrong to get to that point, but the basics are there.
Okay.
So we talked a lot about resources that help developers and publishers making things more accessible. And I have a question. Are there any resources for people with visual impairments? Are there any resources you can use that make your life easier? Access all these core books, for example, for TTRPGs. Are there any resources you usually use?
Right. So, if you can find a publisher that made a good PDF, you can read that. If you can find a publisher that made a bad PDF, maybe you can read that too. Sometimes you end up using OCR, the document is basically just a picture of text, which is a thing that happens. You can use either external or built into a screen reader optical character recognition to sort of start pulling things out of there. But it's going to be a terrible experience, right? A limit to what you can do. Now, a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stuff particularly is really accessible on the internet. As far as references, finding out how a class works, for instance, or learning about a spell. I think I've yet to not be able to find that on the first or second Google result. So if you search for something and it's on a website, chances are it's going to work pretty great. If you're looking at the books, so like Sam was saying, some publishers are really concerned about copyright issues, and sometimes they go as far as to, I was saying if you stick to the basics, your things will likely be accessible. But if you go really, really far to prevent people from copying your stuff and sharing it on the internet or whatever, you might actually be making it impossible to read for a screen reader. And then blind players or DMs who bought the thing, who paid you money for that PDF and wanted to read it. So the people you're protecting with your anti-piracy measures can't read it.
Watermarking. There's some of the TTRPG depositories that are out there where you can buy your games. They give you the option of watermarking your PDFs. So it puts your name and the order number at the bottom. Totally screws up e-readers. They can't get past it. So as a publisher, don't turn that on.
Really? Because after you said watermarking it, I've thought about how many books I've bought that have a watermark, my name and the number and whatnot, and that's really that bad?
So chances are what's happening there is they're grabbing your potentially fantastic, fully accessible PDF, and they're making a new one with a watermark, and they're ignoring all the hard work you put into adding all text, into properly formatting your tables, and it's just boxes with text in them, and then an extra box that's the watermark. Right? I don't have experience with this, but that's the most likely explanation for something like that.
Okay.
So the funny thing is, the blind player or DM who bought the thing now can't really use it. But the people they're going after, the pirates, yar, me mateys, chances are they can ultimately take a picture of their screen. Who cares? I gotta zoom in a little bit. It's not super sharp. I can still make it out, right? So they're not actually necessarily hurting their targets, if you will, but they're making other people's lives hard for little gain. If you don't feel like supporting authors, creators, publishers, etc., and you feel like getting your content somewhere else, you might not care that it doesn't, that the text isn't selectable if you can still read it, right? Who cares if you can't select it? That's totally fine. Well, if you can't select it, then there's absolutely no chance the screen reader is working with it. Even if you can, you might not. So you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater for what, right? To make some people's lives not necessarily harder and to really ruin it for other people. If publishers could be nicer about that. And so I'm sure these stats don't mean as much to you, but a quarter of the US population is somehow disabled, right? Okay, so if we take that for a general population, there's a lot of disabled people, right? It's not that weird, right? So the size of the market, you're going from annoying to completely leaving out, is likely to be significant if you don't make your content accessible. And really, if you have people who are dedicated to the stuff you're producing and are really into it, like Dungeons and Dragons, well, those are my two arguments. You can be a decent human being Or you can consider that there's people that want to pay for your stuff, and maybe they made the mistake of paying it for it once. They realize they probably shouldn't have, because you either accidentally or through being nearly malicious made their content inaccessible to them, and they're not going to pay for it again. And they're going to tell their friends, hey, I don't want to pay for this. You shouldn't either, if you can't use it either. Or if you just think that it's wrong for a company to do that and you would rather they not do that.
Like, I will choose being a decent human being over protecting my stuff from people that will probably still be able to get it anyway, to summarize that a bit. Okay, so I wanted to circle back to the event for a short bit, because we're nearing the end of the episode. Can you guys a little bit summarize again what we've talked about, what the event is about, where the money goes, and generally leave any last messages you want to throw out there, any shout outs, anything that you still want to focus on?
I'll just add real quick that Sam talked about special effect. We're also supporting Able Gamers, who has a similar mission and work in a similar way in the US. And otherwise,
sorry, I didn't really know much about Able Gamers when I came into this, but I was looking at their website and realised that they're pretty much doing the same as special effects, which is fantastic.
Yeah, the world is very big, and it needs very many charities doing that.
No, it's cool. But yeah, Everyone Games is aiming to get the word out that it doesn't matter if you can't see, it doesn't matter if you can't hear, everyone can play roleplay games. It's theatre of the mind goes a long way in a lot of games. Some games are more geared up towards using miniatures, but that's not to say you can't have a massive map and big miniatures. Why do you have to stick to the little ones? You know, there's ways around these things. People can still play the game. They can have the scene described to them in a better way than just, do you want to go forwards and hit the dude? You can explain there's a barrel to the side of the bad guy that potentially you could jump off of, or at least you could smash it apart and hit him with shrapnel. It's about helping people discover that there's ways to describe what they're doing in the game and to play with everyone of able-bodied and non-able-bodied. Everyone can join in. We all love the roleplay game because it's accessible to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. So real quick, you touched on something that's really interesting to me, theater of the mind and describing the situation, you know, the map or what have you. So the game I'm running at Cat, it's entirely theater of the mind. And a really fun thing I do is I don't have a map, and not having a map creates really interesting situations where I will actually ask a player, so what's up right now? What do you want to do? And they might say, I wonder if there's a pipe I can climb. And so I'll make them roll for it. You know, you get a good roll, there's a pipe, go ahead and try and climb it. You don't, maybe there isn't. Or maybe their idea is so outlandish or interesting that, yeah, definitely do the crazy thing. You know, the map is what you make it.
So are there any socials or anything you want to shout out for the event? How can people find you? Where can they find you? And any websites you want to shout out? Or
so it's www.everyone-games.com.
And you should definitely follow Everyone Games 2 on Twitter, so at Everyone Games 2, which is super active, and you'll get all the updates there. I've also been tweeting out some relevant stuff. You can find me at Blind Mostly on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. There's also the Discord channel, which you can access from the website.
Yeah, so a link to a Discord channel is kind of a nightmare to read out. But yeah, definitely go to the bottom of the website and find the Knights of the Braille Discord server, which is where the event's happening. And but yeah, like I barely touched on it. It's another thing besides the event that people can get into, just not just these 2 days, right?
Yeah, obviously everything will be found in the description below, or beside, or wherever you listen to this episode. Anywhere there's an info box, and there you will find any links, any extra information that we put there, anything that you can access, the Discord, the Tiltify website, the website of Everyone Games, the stream.
All right, and you can find us at DoubleDM Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and you can join our Discord server through the link on our pin post on Twitter. And thank you guys for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
For talking to us. I think that's the end of the episode, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for the listen, and hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.